Hey there, welcome back to Total Geek Live Baltimore Presents. I am Baltimore, and today I'm going to bring you the second issue of Grand Design, X-Men Grand Design, that is. So just 2 weeks ago, we got the first issue of it, and now we're spoiled with the second issue. That's awesome. Except for the part that the third issue comes out late 2018. I'm not a huge fan about that part. But I did pick this up. I'm really excited about it. I am really enjoying what Ed Piskor is doing. This is the copy that I got, the creepy mastermind version. This is a variant copy of it. And this issue, this second issue of X-Men Grand Design, takes everything that happened between X-Men 1 and X-Men 66 when they started, before they went into reprints, and it tells the entire story. And it's really, really fun, and it's very interesting. I am really enjoying what Ed is doing. I think he has a great eye and a great thoughtful way that he's created the these first two issues. It's a little more villain focused than I was expecting, which is kind of cool because more often than not, I mean, we already know the hero's story for the X-Men. We already know kind of their whole thing. So it's kind of nice to get a little more insight and understanding as to what the villains were doing, why they were doing it, you know, what kind of became of them. Because if you have read the first 60 odd issues of X-Men, it gets a little weird. It gets a little crazy. It gets a little weird, I think is the best word for it. Strange, maybe. They are the strangest teens of all, after all. But there are a lot of weird villains out there, like one-off villains, like, of course, we never hear back from, like the Locust. And so it's kind of weird to kind of get a little bit, not weird. It's cool that we get a little bit more insight into the villains, you know, these first 60-odd issues, and kind of getting a sort of through line for them, which is what Ed's been doing. You know, the first issue focused on everything that happened before X-Men 1. And this, basically, like I said before, deals with everything from issue 1 to issue 66. So we get all of the amazing Stan Lee and Jack Kirby concepts in Ed's really cool style. So we get the Sentinels, we get Juggernaut, we get Kazar and the Savage Land, we get, you know, Magneto, and of course all the rest of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. We get the Factor 3, Banshee. We get the Lucifer. We get all these kind of cool villains and stories, and a way to kind of tie them in to make them make sense. One thing I didn't talk about before, but I am a little disappointed with, is I understand Ed's taking this from X-Men to X-Men 281. Basically, that's all he's doing with, and that's all he's telling his whole story with. But that makes me a little frustrated because we're missing out on elements like Cassandra Nova, who is Xavier's twin. We get no mention of that at all here. Or we don't get any mention of Sage, Tessa, being, instead of being the sixth X-Man, she's sent to be the a spy for the Hellfire Club. So that would have been actually nice to get that in here and to see that kind of progress in a little bit different way. And you know, Xavier losing his legs when he meets Sage. So it would have been nice to see those. It would have been a way to kind of draw a lot more together. I understand why he did it, and you know, he's going to do what he's going to do. That's fine. But it would have been nice to kind of get those two elements at least. Cassandra Nova being Xavier's twin in the womb, and then Sage, who was going to be the sixth X-Man, but it instead became a Hellfire secret agent. So I really, really enjoyed this. I think, you know, I've said it before, I really am enjoying Ed's cartoon style, the way that he's kind of presenting all the panels and the characters and their designs and everything. I think it's really cool, and I think it really fits the story of, you know, kind of back then. You know, I also heard that he based the yellowing of the paper. If you see paper's a little bit yellow at the edges and everything, so it kind of reminiscent of those old vintage comics from the 60s, 70s, whatever, that age. And he said he based this off of I think Hawkman, an old Hawkman comic. So it's kind of that's really cool. The detail and the level of research and everything that he's going into to make this a really fun and immersive book. Um, so that's really cool. And I think it's also pretty neat the way that he's envisioning a continuity that connects everything. Like we talked about in X-Men and X-Men Design Grand Design 1 and in X-Men Grand Design 2. Everything kind of weaves its way in and makes sense in a larger narrative uh, viewing, so to speak, which is what he's trying to accomplish. So I think top marks on that. You're getting it done really well. Part of what I really enjoyed is I've read these comics before. I had the Masterworks collected edition of all of these X-Men issues before they went into reprints. And what I really liked about this is it kind of connected things in a way and gave you kind of a fresh eye, so to speak, on these characters that we haven't seen in, sometimes a long time. And also getting those first, images of characters that you're like, wow, this is so cool. Banshee, for one, that was so awesome to see him and to kind of see his story kind of be told in a way that weaves itself pretty seamlessly into his overall storyline. Another thing that was really cool is seeing Mimic. I am actually a huge Mimic fan. I know probably the second or third one only. But I really love him. I think he's a really fun character. I wish they would do a lot more with him. But it was really cool to see him in here. And he was, the sixth X-Man, the first X-Men to join outside the original five. So it was really cool to see him in here and kind of get his joining and his kind of story involved in here. And I think it was a really well done piece of work from Ed on this. One thing I wasn't too super keen on was the panel with Jean and her first boyfriend, Ted. I felt that was a little unnecessary. I'm not a prude by any stretch of the imagination, but just didn't feel like it was a necessary part. It could have been taking place in a different location and it would have been just fine. But still, it was really, really neat to kind of see the story that all of the original five took in this issue, and they kind of bring it through the death of Xavier when he faked his death. It actually brought this the way that Ed created this comic. He kind of brought in Nick Fury in a lot more than he ever was involved in the original series, which is kind of neat to kind of like. Of course, it makes sense for him to be kind of involved in the Shield aspects of the goings on. And it was so cool and so awesome to see Polaris and Havoc make their debut since they originated in X-Men 49 and 50. So that was really cool to have them here in X-Men Grand Design, which talks about the early setting of the X-Men series. So we get to see them and their kind of interplay and how important they are to the mythos. So it was really cool to get them there. And then we have, the big invasion that Xavier was come back for and prevented. And so you get kind of a full story as what happened between the beginning of X-Men and then X-Men 66. And so I keep referencing this, but maybe you don't know. At the end of X-Men 66 in the first run, X-Men stories went done. They went into reprints. So 67 was actually a reprint of an older, first issue of one of the X-Men titles. And that continued until X-Men 93, at which point they had gotten together with new creators and created the all-new X-Men, who you are very familiar with. That's Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler. You have all those characters that come into it after that, which is X-Men 94, and that's when it continues the stories on. So there's a whole period, 30-ish issues, where it's just nothing but reprints. And this is something that Marvel did for a while because the series was not selling well, but the older reprints were doing pretty well. So they just put the book into reprints and let it go. And then, a few years later, they decided, let's revive the title and give it to someone and see what happens. And, lightning in a bottle, pretty much, struck gold with this, all new X-Men, all new, all different X-Men. Um, so that's why we kind of talk about the X-Men 1 through 66 as a complete era, because that's the original class plus Polaris and Havoc and their adventures. So in between those 30 odd issues, which is about 6 or 7 years ish, the X-Men characters as they were did go on to other comics and appearances, most notably Avengers and maybe an Incredible Hulk issue as well. The Beast changed forms. He experimented on himself and became, at first a gray furry creature, and then the more classic look, blue, apish furry creature. He joined the Avengers, and he was one of the X-Men that broke out. So it was pretty cool to just kind of see the entire storyline from Ed brought into a narrative that kind of made sense. But I am so disappointed that we're going to have to wait so long for the next issue. I know it's going to be great. I'm going to be looking forward to it. But, until then, Ed, work as hard as you can and as fast as you can and as quick as you can, because we need more. So that's my review of X-Men Grand Design. I really dig it. I really love it. I think you should pick it up and enjoy it if you're kind of going to get an idea about what the X-Men are about and kind of what's their story. This is a great point to familiarize yourself with and learn about the X-Men. You need to be learned. So, as always, it's all geek to us. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I will be back with you soon with more reviews. Take care.